All right. There was a story that was out today on 49er Web Zone about it's titled Insiders 49ers convinced Deebo Samuel relationship is over, releases the likely outcome. So Tim Kawakami of the SF Standard basically has put out a bunch of things, and Debo's responded to some of them. Tim put out earlier today that that Deebo is 20 pounds overweight. And Deebo kind of pushed back on that and was like, "Hey, everybody, stop talking about this and that." Um, the Niners have given Debo's agent permission to seek a trade. And yet Matt Barrows, I think there's a few people out there that have kind of suggested that, this is probably not going to result in a trade, that ultimately it may result in Deebo being released. I think it's likely that he's done with the Niners. Tim Kawakami on the 49ers Plus Minus podcast said, I guess Kawakami wondered if the Niners were allowing Samuel to gauge his market value and maybe, leading to a return to the team or what. And he said that the people that he talked to, they've dismissed that notion. The quote was, "I checked. It's not that. I've heard that the two sides are separating in their minds. Now things can change. Who knows? If he has no opportunities out there, that might be different, but I don't think he has no opportunities if the Niners release him. He might even have a nice new deal, but as a release player, not as a traded player, more likely. And that the two sides are, I don't want to say irreconcilable, but it's likely that the two sides have decided that they're ready to separate." So he counts $15.8 million against the Niners cap. And his numbers have gone down. I mean, his numbers have declined. He had 14 touchdowns in 2021. He had 800 yards this year and 4 total touchdowns. Just 3 years after having almost 1,800 scrimmage yards, he had almost 1,000 less yards. Kawakami said he had a bad year. He's not in shape. I said it on last week's podcast, 20 pounds. I keep hearing it, 20 pounds overweight. Anyway, Deebo didn't like that. He kind of shot back at Kawakami. I don't think it really means anything. Matt Barrows of The Athletic believes the 49ers will ultimately release Deebo. Trading him is complicated. Doing so before June 1st would result in a dead cap hit twice as large as simply keeping him. However, the 49ers could reduce the salary cap impact by designating him a post-June release. The only reason I'm not sure about where this is going is that John Lynch did say to us at the end of the year, we're not in the business of giving away good football players, when he was asked specifically about Deebo. And if they want to trade him, they can take a bigger cap hit and trade him and get some draft pick compensation. I don't think it's going to be a significant compensation. I would say I'm on record as saying I think at best it's a 5th round pick. What's the end game here? How's this going to come to a conclusion? When is it going to come to a conclusion? He's got that big bonus coming to him in March, so I got to imagine whatever's going to happen is going to happen before that bonus gets paid. What's your feeling on Deebo, how it stands, and how it's going to end?
I'm very thankful the fact that we can now say goodbye to Deebo Samuel in the offense. That said, this all comes down to money. It always has. Deebo wanted the big contract in 2022. He got one, 3 years, $71 million. Although throughout that time, he was asking for trades, posting on social media, this, that, and the other. But like you said, a lot of this comes down to that March 22nd date with the $15 million bonus hits. That's about 10-ish days after the new league year starts. So theoretically, San Francisco is going to have about just over a week to see what they can do with Deebo. That said, Kawakami's report of him being 20 pounds overweight, it's funny, looking back at whether it's training camp or OTAs or preseason, a lot of the talk was he's in the best shape of his entire career. He looks phenomenal. What happened? Did he gain 20 pounds during the year? Is this a 20 pounds he's gained since the year ended, which has kind of turned San Francisco off? I know John Lynch, they always overvalue their players. Jimmy Garoppolo wanted the 2nd round pick, couldn't get that. Deebo Samuel, the best you're probably going to get is maybe a late 4th rounder if you're lucky. I just don't know if Jed York is willing to spend $15 extra million he doesn't have to keep Deebo Samuel on the team 10 more days after the new league year begins. I'm hoping they can find an agreement with the trade somewhere. But if Jay York says enough's enough, that's what it all comes down to. $15 million can be the end all be all when it comes to separating Deebo Samuel from the San Francisco 49ers. But I'm honestly happy. I think it helps the offense. I think it helps a lot of things with Kyle Shanahan to get Deebo off this team in 2025.
I thought, I really thought he was done as soon as I saw Kyle, really go to him in that Rams game. It just
Yep.
said to me, you know what? Kyle knows they're parting ways, and he wants to make sure that on the way out the door that he gives Deebo a full opportunity to save himself. Or he had talked a big game. I am not losing it. I'm not getting the ball. That was
Yeah,
his
it's the
talk going into that
opportunities.
game. I'm not losing it. People think I'm losing it. I'm not losing it. I'm just not getting the football. And then he dropped the key ball that could have been a touchdown. He played terrible in the game.
Yeah.
At that point, I thought, okay, Kyle's his buddy. Kyle wants to have a friendship with him after football. And Kyle knows, hey, you know what? Let's feed him. He's been big in some big games. He was big in Philly 2 years ago in that game down the stretch. He's been the big dog in a lot of the Niners' biggest games. I mean, Deebo has risen to the occasion, and maybe Kyle thought he would rise to the occasion, or maybe Kyle just wanted to give a guy that he knew they were parting ways with one more opportunity to kind of show what he had and maybe elevate. And not only did he not elevate, he kind of shrunk in the moment, dropped an obvious touchdown pass. And that really had a huge impact in that game. If he catches that pass, they probably beat the Rams that night.
And it's not like we shouldn't have seen this coming. Go back to last year's draft, 31st overall pick, Ricky Pearsall. As soon as that pick comes in, the panic meter starts going crazy. Is it Ayuk or is it Deebo? Who's out the building? Who's going to be gone? And while San Francisco elected to kind of take this one final big swing to maybe win a Super Bowl, although it didn't happen, the writing has been on the wall for a year. Once they re-signed Ayuk and drafted Pearsall, it was, okay, Deebo, you're the guy, you're the odd man out, you're the guy out the door. It was just a matter of when was it going to be a trade or release? Who will take that first big step into getting him off the team? But honestly, like Deebo, go to that Rams game, drops the big touchdown. At that moment in itself, forget asking for a trade, forget the financial situation. At that moment, it was so obvious he's no longer the same player he once was, and that's okay. But at that point, he's going to be 29 this year. He's been beaten and broken and giving you everything he's got. And he's been a really good Niner. However, it's time to move on. You now hopefully have two guys that can beat man coverage once Ayuk comes back. You have Jawan Jennings, who had a phenomenal year this year. You're probably going to want to re-sign him for a longer contract. You're going to want to extend George Kittle. Like Deebo Samuel, in a way, is kind of being phased out of the offense, and it's a good thing it's happening.
Where does he wind up? A lot of people have speculated Carolina, but you know what? Carolina is not a destination. I know he's from North Carolina, or he's from South Carolina, and the Panthers are close by. But I think that Deebo wants to be on a good team. I think he understands that he only gets payback if he's on a relevant team and plays big and maybe wins something. And I think ultimately he does care about winning. So I know Baltimore went after him last year. He was wearing an Eagles jersey this week. He was looking, celebrating with A.J. Brown. I bet you anything he either winds up in Baltimore or Philadelphia or Washington. One of those places that's, that where he can win, where he can maybe stick it to the Niners a little bit. I don't think it's not, to me, it's not about money. I think it's about, winning an opportunity and then I also kind of think that there could be some teams that look at Deebo and go, you know what, the 49ers offensive line is horrible. You put him here in Baltimore behind our killer line, he might be better. You put him in Philly behind their killer line, he might be better. I could see some teams thinking that, he's not necessarily done because his age doesn't say he's done. But if you do know NFL football, guys who run through you are done at 28. Guys who run through you are done at 29. That's where he is. I mean, go look at Earl Campbell. Outside of John Riggins, I can't think of a single guy whose game was they ran through people that did anything at the age after like the age of 29, and that's where he's at right now. So I kind of think he's done. I really do, but I also think he's going to wind up on a good team. I don't think he's going to be on a bad team.
I would agree with you. And I think a lot of what Deebo does in regards to his age, you have to point to he's a running back. He's not a receiver. Receivers can play till they're 33, 34 times. Deebo can't play until he's 33, 34. This is his last maybe big contract when it's all said and done. When you talk about where he may go in 2025, maybe Tampa Bay. I'm not sure exactly what their
Hmm,
cap situation is, but if
that's
they lose
interesting.
Chris Godwin, they want to
Yeah.
be competitive still. I could see them saying, you know what, we have Mike Evans. He's our deep threat. Let's go get the underneath guy and Deebo Samuel, open things up out there with Baker Mayfield and company. Um, I know a lot of people are out there mocking like, oh, Deebo and a pick for a player. The odds that happen are very slim. It usually doesn't happen like that in the NFL, player for player trades. But my hope, and it's probably not going to happen, but my hope is that they keep Deebo after the draft. And there's a team out there that didn't get a receiver, didn't sign one in free agency, and is like, look, we're desperate. We got to get a receiver in here. Whether it is Tampa Bay or somebody else, who knows? Maybe it's the Falcons. I have no idea. The teams that are like, we got to find some weapons. Oh, Debo's out there. He wants out. We'll pay him whatever it is. San Francisco saves, I don't know what it is, like 15 or $10 million this year after a post June first cut and whatnot. I just think that Deebo, he only probably has 1 or 2 years left. He has to maximize that. And if he wants to set himself up for a Super Bowl, maybe, I don't think many teams that are going to be vying for a Lombardi trophy are even going to want Deebo Samuel. That's the issue to me. His destination is not a team that's going to reciprocate where, for him. It's going to be teams like the Jets, teams like, I don't know, the Colts, teams like the Saints, like maybe the Giants if they get Shadur Sanders. Like, it's not going to be really competitive teams that say, I got to get Deebo Samuel.
I think that's a good point. It's okay. So then, what also makes this kind of complicated, and what you're suggesting there, though, Sterling, means that they would pay that big roster bonus in March.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's going to happen. It seems like they're going to separate before that, but you never know.
Yeah.
And you also never know about their interest in getting back compensation. Now, I've said this a few times. I really believe that the 49ers are run by a three-headed monster, and all three guys are judged independently by Jed York. And this is my belief. I think Prague is judged by the contracts, how they get done, at what rate, what level are the Niners spending. The cap is his domain. I think Lynch is about trades and draft picks, and I think Kyle's about W's, wins and losses. And I really believe that John may want to trade Deebo because he doesn't want to hand him over for nothing. And he wants to have something coming back. But as you stated, and as I've stated too, I don't believe that he's going to fetch anything more than a mid to late day 3 draft choice. That being said, the other thing that complicates this is that the 49ers need him. They don't need him, but they need a receiver.
Right.
And Ayuk's out for I don't know how long. I mean, that's the other question. How long do you think Ayuk's out for? He tore the MCL, the ACL, the meniscus. I think he's gone for sure until at least Thanksgiving, and I don't even know what you can expect to get from him. I think he'll be diminished. I mean, that injury was very serious. He wasn't the same player last year that he was 2 years ago. I think it's very safe to say that he's probably not going to be the same player next year that he even was this year. So now we're talking about multiple steps down from the apex of his career. I don't know what. Can the Niners win the Super Bowl next year with a wide receiver core of Ayuk off the injury, JJ, Pearsall, and Cowing? I don't think so, man. I really don't think so. So I think it's going to take. I do think they should move off of Deebo. I do think they will move off of Deebo, but I also think they're going to have to go find a receiver. Now, it could be in a trade, it could be in the draft, or it could be in free agency. Those are the three options. What do you have anybody that you think? I mean, there was an article today written, that was talking about Amari Cooper, but Amari Cooper had a terrible year this last year. Had a 15% drop rate, was like the worst of his career. I don't know about Amari Cooper. Other people have said Devontae Adams. Um, I don't know. To me, that he is not the receiver that they need. I mean, they need a receiver that complements what they have. And what they have are guys that can move the chain. So what they really need is they need a guy who can really get downfield and make big plays. And there are a couple guys like that in free agency, but they're not big stars. They're Rondale Moore, they're Tutu Atwell, they're McCole Hardman types. And I could see them going for a receiver like that because that's the receiver that they don't have and would round out their room. But people are talking big names like Amari Cooper and Devontae Adams and T. Higgins and of course the draft. You know, what if T Mac, Tetaroa McMillan drops in their lap? And we'll do a little mock before we get out of here. But what do you think, Sterling? I mean, if they move off of Deebo, are you with me that they have to have a significant receiver coming in? And then if so, who do you like? Who do you want?
I would agree that if they trade or release Deebo Samuel, you have to find whether it's like another bona fide number two receiver or starting caliber guy or someone you can just trust to start, for a month or two, maybe once Ayuk comes back, which I'm hoping. I think he got hurt October 22nd against the Chiefs. I'm hoping it's around early November once he's back, but post ACLs, it usually takes one whole year anyways to get back to who they once were. And who knows, right? That said, I think there's a player out there that was, I guess, rumored to be tied to them in at the trade deadline last year. I think Darius Slayton makes a lot of sense for them. He's got the speed. He can stretch the field. He's not going to, be Amari Cooper in regards to his ability to play towards the sidelines or whatnot, but he's also going to be a heck of a lot cheaper. And I think for a team that probably wants to pay a player for 1 to 2 years at a pretty cheap rate, I think Slayton makes a lot of sense. He's in his, mid to late 20s. He's not going to, not going to cost you $10 million a year, because when I see these big names like Devontae Adams and T. Higgins, I think, is San Francisco really going to pay another wide receiver 15, 20, $30 million? T. Higgins wants to get paid. Devontae Adams, for whatever his contract looks like post-release, he's going to want to get paid. I know he's an NorCal guy and all that stuff at Fresno State, but he's going to want money. San Francisco is already paying Ayuk $30 million per year, and Pierce was a first-round pick. I have a really hard time believing that they're not going to treat this anything, or they're going to treat this similar to how they treat that third cornerback. Cheap veteran, $6 to $8 million, and call it a day and hope it works. I think that is the blueprint for what they're going to do, and I think Slayton fits that a lot for this offense.